Greetings, true believers, and welcome to episode 11 of the Pull List Podcast Season 2, a bi-weekly show about comics, pop culture, and faith. My name is Chris Poirier, and with me, as always, is my comic co-host and comic book guru himself, the one and only, Hector.
I don't think as a Christian I'm allowed to be called a guru. I think that gets into some prosperity issues or something. So
maybe, or you just need to write more books. Wait, you already have all those books. Anyway,
I have enough. I'm tired.
Yeah, that's good. So not guru, but you're really good at comics. So welcome. And so on today's episode of the Pull List, we do have a great show for you, whether there's gurus involved or not. We're going to hit the latest news that you need to know, our most recent pull recommendations from the last 2 weeks, and even our favorite new number ones. And there were a metric ton of number ones. This is the Pull List Podcast. So strap yourselves in and prepare yourselves, for we've got Comic Sign!
Better put the word out. Get ready for the nerd out. Better put specs on. Better bring necks on. I cut handsome shit.
It's good to be back, and it's time to bring you all of the DC news. I mean, the comic book news. And Hector and I were kind of talking a little bit before the show, and it was weird because I feel like I went through a ton of industry news over the last 2 weeks, and the industry was just like, here, have some DC. And everyone else is like, we're cool, bro. I don't know. It's just how it shook out. But we do have some interesting things kind of going on, at least in the DC universe, and kind of a new announcement out of Marvel. And just off the top, for all of you that were really looking forward to the DC Swamp Thing Halloween special, don't worry, it's still coming, just something changed. And that something is the headliner was supposed to be Tom King for the writing of that, and he is no longer listed in the solicitation. There's not a lot of explanation as to why, but some people do kind of think the fact of Tom's just writing a lot right now.
Did you see Tom's announcement, though, for what's coming in November, I believe?
The Rorschach thing, or even more? Well, that's the thing, that he's got so many things that are coming, and maybe I did miss it. I feel like a bad person.
He did a Twitter announcement that Phantasm is coming to Bat and Cat in November.
Oh, yes. I probably should have put that in here because, yes, we're going to see Phantasm in regular continuity, and that's pretty freaking great. I totally forgot about that because I saw the shield and everything, and I did the little fanboy dance and everything, and then I completely forgot about it. See, this is why podcasts are glorious and why there's two of us, because we'll remember things between the two of us. But yeah, so Tom dropped out of the Halloween special with Swamp Thing, which will still probably be pretty awesome because Swamp Thing's in it. But yeah, it's because he's got a lot going on. He's got Rorschach, he's got that going on. He's just all over the place doing Tom King things. So I guess we forgive him for now. So that's a thing. But also kind of buried in all the industry news is, and we talked a little bit about this on the last episode, but there's been some rumors out there that the remnants, or at least the setup to what was supposed to be the 5G reboot of the DC universe before Didio got released, still exists, that they have stories that were written, and I guess DC's kind of like, well, this stuff is done, we should release it, and we'll come up with other names, or we'll Elseworld it, or whatever, just like we're getting with Ridley's Batman. Apparently parts of 5G may be repackaged as basically a mini thing called Shattered. And this is rumors at this point. There's not a lot supporting it. And then DC tried to come out, I think, yesterday as part of part 2 of DC Fandome, which, if you didn't know, there was a part 2 from part 1 that was supposed to focus.
Sort of more.
Yeah, there's sort of more, and we'll get to that. But they said, no, we're definitely not doing that thing, so who knows. But if we see anything called Shattered, it is possible that they're going to take some of the stories that did get written, that was supposed to be handing off of the generations to a younger generation of DC Comics superheroes. It may be coming, so keep your ear to the ground on that one. And that kind of does bring us into that second part of, hey, Did you know that DC Fandome had a second part?
I found out on the internet yesterday.
Right. So as we're recording this, like right now, part 2 is going on. And part 2 literally was all the comic book retailers and comic book fans going, wow, Fandome was really cool. We got to see all those cool trailers and everything. But you had like 2 panels on comics for a comic book company. And they're like, yeah, we got you. We're going to do another weekend of that. And well, that's now. So when you hear this, it's already happened. And on the first day, they also had some major technical issues and crashed it into the ground. They blamed the Riddler and made some snarky comments about the Riddler ruining their parade or something. But their website just didn't work. So they lost part of yesterday. And I was going through the news hoping that I could say cool comic book stuff that came out of part 2. And I got nothing for you, fam. So I'm going to keep an eye out for a readout on what actually got discussed kind of after the fact, because hopefully we would see something for what is it? Endless Winter, what actually is coming next in DC continuity, maybe a little more on the Rorschach book. See, Chris is just now telling you what I hope they talked about, so that we can have some cool things to talk about. But yeah, so that was a thing as well. So like I said, all this DC news. And just to end on that wonderful high note, we have Batman Day coming. And I think I alluded to this as well the last episode, but yeah, so Batman Day is September 19th, so you should hear this in time for preparing for it, but the comic shops pretty much got the short end of the stick on this one, that DC prepared absolutely nothing for them, that it was all digital, down to comics and kits and all kinds of stuff, where normally we would get tons of stuff on Batman Day. Like we'd have to FOC it like way out in advance. And they're like, oh, our bad. COVID sucks, so nothing for you. And the retailers are like, yeah, COVID does suck. How about giving us something so we can try to put some joy back into people's lives? And in the middle of all of it, they were kind of like, well, maybe. And then hold on to your seat of your pants, folks. Of all organizations, Diamond Distributors came out in the middle and went, we'll totally distribute some cool Batman and Catwoman masks for everybody in time for Batman Day, as long as you get them to us, DC. And DC did sure. So if you keep your eye out, and I believe also, if I read it correctly, that they were going to do that at zero cost to the retailers so that there'd actually be something to benefit some of them. So if you need a really terrible cutout paper mask of Batman and Catwoman, and who doesn't, you can try to keep an eye out to see if your store was able to get their hands on some of those. It just feels really weird to celebrate 80 plus years of Batman and it not be in a comic book store, but maybe that's just me. I enjoyed Batman Day. We always had cake.
No, I love Batman Day. And there's always cake at the local shop. And, you know, there's usually sales and stuff like that. And I go just for that.
Yeah. Well, we've had this conversation before that community is still one of the biggest and most important parts of the comic book industry. And, well, yeah, we know COVID's made things harder. That's no doubt. But even more so than usual, people they're looking for people, which sounds weird, and it sounds even more weird in COVID, but, you know, wear your mask, be safe, wash your hands, and celebrate Batman Day, hopefully. But shifting gears a little bit, I do have some Marvel news. And I said that as we started, that it's weird that it's like just this deluge of DC information. And maybe it's just because there's a lot going on, and there kind of is. But do you remember, it was probably year ago, 2 years ago, that Black Cat got her own series kind of spun out of the Spider stuff, and it kind of abruptly ended around issue 12 or 13.
Yeah, they still give number ones away free at like cons and junk.
That sounds right. But Black Cat is coming back in December, I believe. I have in my notes. Yes, that series, and I think they're going to pick up at 14. I don't get the impression they were going to renumber one it, but it's Marvel. They're probably going to renumber one it, because that's how you get stuff to hand out at cons.
Literally, the show I did the day before COVID shut everything down, I walked away with a stack of Black Cat #1s.
Yeah, so for folks that may be confused or curious about this, when any company does a #1, usually you go heavy in it because there are going to be variants that you can purchase, and the variants are where the money actually is. So sometimes you'll get 1 in 10s, 1 in 25s, 1 in 50s, 1 in 100s, 1 in 500s, and then those ultra coveted 1 in 1000s. Basically, if you sell a 1 in 1000 at what they in theory are worth, being a 1 in 1000 item, you can pay for the 1000 comics that you are never going to sell to recover, because that means a shop had to buy 1000 regular covers to get that one in 1000 variant. And that becomes the book that we then give away at events, conventions, etc., because we already made our money somewhere else, and we literally just have all of this comic that now we don't have much we can do with. So that's usually where those things come from, and it's a fascinating bit of the economy, because the other thing that's really fascinating, sorry, I'm like totally nerding out here, but I guess that's why you're all here, is that 1000 books that a store had to buy to get that 1 in 1000 goes against that book's sales record, because the store bought those. So that's why comics can be a little weird, like we talked a few weeks ago, in terms of what sell-through numbers actually mean, is because a lot of stores might have bought 5,000 books to get 5 1 in 1000 variants if they exist, to make all of their money off from selling those 5. Not the 5,000, the 5. So comics are weird, but they're still kind of fun. And that's what a lot of us in the industry refer to as variant math, or the infamous Marvel math, because they also will allow us to combine multiple covers or even multiple issues of something to cover variant purchases. And you literally have to sit there and do math across multiple things, because none of the ordering systems will do it for you, to figure out if you meet the thresholds for certain things. So if you ever catch one of your comic book store owners on FOC day, like screaming at the computer, that's why. And you should take pity upon them and buy them a coffee, because they need it. So from my end, that's all I really caught in the news. I don't know if you saw anything else that we should definitely talk about here, or if we can jump into. I kind of already envisioned this show as I looked at it was, there's just a lot of comics out in the last 2 weeks that
there are. Outside of Robert Pattinson getting COVID.
Oh yeah. The bat got the bat disease. No?
Thing.
Yeah. That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah.
It's not good. So yeah, we'll see how much that slows down production. So that will be interesting. But yeah, I think I'm going to move us right along then, because this is a comic show this week, and we're going to talk a ton about a bunch of comics. So that's what you need to know from industry, and that's kind of our bi-weekly look at the industry and delivering you the inside knowledge. And as always, you can join us in on the conversation with Hector and I and all of your other nerdy friends on the Love Thy Nerd and the Facebook, in the Facebook community, or on the Discord. And all those links are available on the website, but also in our show notes. So if you have any questions, just hop on over and you can talk with us over there. We got a comics channel on the Discord, and in the community, just about everything nerdy goes. So jump in and talk to us about what we missed, what we said, and also what's kind of on your mind, because like we constantly say, this is the community and we want to serve you and also learn all the wonderful nerdy things in comics that we may be missing out on. And so, like we said, we're talking about tons and tons of comics this week. I kind of took a look at it over the last 2 weeks. I had 25 books I read in the last 2 weeks. In the last 2 week period before that, I had like 30 something. That seems to be my average. So if people are wondering how much stuff I'm reading to bring you 3 to 5 books, that's about what I'm reading.
I don't know the numbers, but I know that
how much it costs.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know that on average, I'm somewhere between 40 to 70 every week.
So that means you're probably about the same, because that's about what my average cost at my shops are. And of course, like special editions and or black label.
But it's okay, because Love Thy Nerd pays for all of our books.
Wait, they do?
Oh, wait. No, never mind. That's not real.
Hold on. I'm getting a phone call. No. Dang it. But you can donate money directly to Chris at... No, just kidding. We love our comics. We won't make you pay for them. We're just going to buy them and stack them in our closet like good comic book collectors.
So before we move up to that, I had a trauma this week.
Oh, no.
My kids are home doing remote learning and everything. And I've got a 12-year-old who, watches my other kids, and, it's she earns her babysitting money. And I'm at church in the middle of doing something, whatever I was doing, and I get a phone call from my daughter, so I answer, and dude, it is the most violent, ugly cry, sobbing.
Oh no.
It's to the point that when I answer the phone and I hear her breathing before she ever speaks,
you knew.
I knew something was terribly wrong. Like, the dad panic in me is like, did someone get hurt? Did someone die?
Right.
I'm literally running through the checklist of all the possible wrong things, and my heart's already sank down into the calluses of my feet. I'm like, I'm literally shaking. I'm so scared just hearing her breathe, and this is in a matter of seconds. And she starts trying to talk to me, and she's hyperventilating, and she's so freaking panicked. And so I finally get her to calm down. I'm like, tell me what happened. What's wrong? And she's like, I spilled a cup of hot tea on your comics. And I'm like, oh. I'm like, don't, what? I was like, because I thought, legit thought someone had died. Or she's like, I spilled a cup of hot tea on all your new books. So, like, all the comics I've purchased, like, since June, she, like, shotgun blasted with a cup of hot tea.
Ooh.
And I'm like, well, because I know how much of a dad's girl she is, and she's so sensitive, and obviously she was scared. I was like, okay, you don't need to be this freaked out. Make sure you dry the floor, lay all the wet books out on a towel, and I'll deal with it when I get home. But it was just like, she was so freaking panicked at the fear of how I was going to react about spilling comics. And I'm like, it's okay. I'm glad you're safe. Thanks for telling me. But then, like, my one thought was like, see, that's why I buy digital.
Well.
But, I've been buying physical books for like 3 or 4 months now. And then literally all of them are drenched. And I'm like,
oh no.
Because
if it was a quality tea, at least Uncle Iro would have approved, right?
She had opened my box of recent stuff to get some books out and was sitting there reading them. So I even had them long boxed and stored, and then like boop. But we store these things.
This cautionary tale has been brought to you by Hector.
Yes. So don't leave open tea around your books, and if you do, comfort your children and let them know they're more valuable than your books. If they are. Don't lie to them. Don't lie to them. If that now what was kind of scary
this
is
why Chris buys slabbed and graded key issues.
My Star Wars #1 from '77 was like maybe 4 inches from the splash zone.
Ooh.
And it's in like a slab, but it's not sealed. And I was like, oh no. That was like the one I was genuinely worried about. But that's cool. Sorry, go on. Let's talk about comics.
Story time with Hector, and it's valuable life lessons brought to you by the Polis Podcast. Remember, read more comics and protect your comics with only the finest BCW boards and bags. And I wish they were a sponsor, but they're not. But protect your stuff if you value your stuff. There are ways.
And as Wu-Tang says, protect the neck.
Protect the neck, for sure. So, jumping in on, like we said, tons of comics. What comics from the last 2 weeks really jumped out for you?
So I'm gonna say the most recent Batman. Again, I'm not thrilled. I don't think it's like the best Batman I've ever read. It's also not the worst.
It's Batman.
It's
Batman.
a thing. Joker War is not like mind blowing, but it's still better than Nightmares.
Yes, we once again are still not dragging around the coffin of my dead wife / your
mother.
mom / whatever. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's going to be the low point. Like, the Looney Tunes issue was better than that. Out of Nightmares.
They really were. For those of you that don't know, there were a bunch of DC did a bunch of crossover with Hanna-Barbera and Looney Tunes stuff, but the Looney Tunes stuff was actually quite amazing.
It was, and even the Looney Tunes issue of Nightmares, where it was the Joker was Batman and Joker as Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner. That I'm not mad at that issue. That issue was fun. But the whole dragging a coffin through the desert while you have trauma, that's not fun. Anyway, Batman 98 once again beats the actual dead horse that is Alfred.
Oh man, right?
I'm like, can you please let
this man lie,
Alfred, and move on? Alfred's been dead forever. What issue are we on? 98?
98.
Alfred died in like 73?
Sounds right.
Please stop. You know?
We're there. We get it.
I mean, you guys have snapped Alfred's neck like in every issue for the last 7 months. Please leave him alone. My inner child is dying every time you do this, and I'd appreciate it. But this was supposed to be effectively Bruce letting Alfred go. Now, if Alfred shows up again in 99, screw you guys. Like,
Hector's not playing anymore.
I'm not. Tinian, I'm coming for you if you do this again. And first of all,
he won't be a guest anytime soon.
I wouldn't let him. But that's the thing. Like, I also don't know how I feel, and this is just me as a reader saying this. I don't know how I feel about when a writer makes a big motion in their story, and then another writer just yanks it and beats it for the sheer novelty of it. I don't love that. Like,
yeah, I get the feeling that they're trying to really nail the PTSD angle of like Batman's really having difficulty letting go of this, but because of the way it's being done and the style that all of it's being done in, it just feels very over dramatic and not in a good way.
Like, I have a feeling that Tom, and his perspective of watching this go down, feels like it's cheap. That's an opinion.
Yeah. I kind of feel that way on the outside looking in as well, but
I mean, that's just my perspective, because I saw the tact in which he handled Alfred's actual death issue. Not just the death issue, but the issue where he mourned Alfred just through the letter, and the manifestation in your head, tacky dead Alfred. I'm like, bro, you're cheapening the experience. But anyway, so that's a thing for me. Marauders number 12. Or also back up track to Batman. There was Harley and Punchline stuff. Surprise. Again,
I still don't care about Punchline.
I don't care about Punchline. I am enjoying Harley. And if we had our final issue of Harley recently, and that also was a Punchline battle. And I'm like, okay. But I'm like, Harley was a functional character with a good story arc before you threw Punchline out. Just saying. But Marauders 12 is our second issue back of the Marauders, where you actually have Kitty Pryde alive again.
Oh, you mean Kate?
Yeah, there's that.
I'm sorry. I saw a bunch of articles this week that are constantly using her formal name, and I'm like, not about this, but go on.
No, yeah, bump that junk. So where Kitty Pryde is actually back, and honestly, I only read Marauders because I'm still a fan of Kitty from Joss Whedon's X-Men arc. He made me love Kitty Pryde, and so I'm reading it for that, because the Kitty Pryde we get in this is very much the Kitty Pryde from X-Men. But just her whole response back in the beginning of X-Men / X-Force of when Charles died, getting the tattoos and being a BA, like, I really loved it. And this is her coming back from the dead, and I really enjoyed the tension of the issue and the fact that it's her coming back from her welcome home party, or it's her coming to her own celebration of life welcome back thing, but she knows she's been murdered, and she knows she's been murdered, but she also knows by who, but she knows she's supposed to downplay it and not deal with it right now and actually interact with the people that murdered her. And like, because, for spoilers, well, it's not spoilers. God, it's been forever. But Sebastian Shaw, who's one of the X-Men, not only is he one of the X-Men, he's one of the High Council X-Men. He's like on
You can get there.
Yeah. He's the Black King. He's on the whatever they call him. But he's one of the primary leaders. He's not on the official council, but he's a high-level leader. He murdered Kitty and would have gotten away with it if it hadn't been for Lockheed's memories. And so she has to interact with Sebastian Shaw and beef up, act like nothing's wrong. And all these people are at a party for her, and all she wants to do is kill this dude. And so originally when she had her moment mourning Charles, she had the words tattooed on her knuckles, "Hold fast," which I love. And but now, since she got resurrected, she didn't have her old tattoo, so she went back to a tattoo shop, got new tattoos, and literally had "Kill Shaw" tattooed across her knuckles. So, because she fully expects that the next time she sees him will be his death. And that she has already shared a plan with Emma on what they're going to do to him, and apparently Emma loves it. So that's not good for anyone.
So just to backtrack here, come on, let's do the X-Men thing. So Sebastian Shaw is one of the seniors of the Hellfire Club.
Yeah, but that doesn't exist anymore.
Does it? But
really.
It's super significant to lore, and even more so from the fact that we have a Phoenix story coming, and Dark Phoenix was one of the times that they were very heavily featured as a full organization. So I don't know, maybe Shaw and all of this and the fact that we know that another Phoenix is important.
No.
See what I did there?
I do. I see it. But yeah, so for the Kitty Pride's sake, I'm reading Marauders. I'm loving it. But I'm also at the place where X-Force is barely hanging on for me. Like, it's a thread nail. Like, I officially gave up on Batman and the Outsiders this close to the end. Like, we're like 2 issues from the end or whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say, that one's going to end anyway, and you couldn't make it? How dare you?
Like, I got to the point in this week where I'm like, you're not worth $4.
I mean, that is the thing with comics, is where the cheap ones are running $3.99, and you've got so many, it's an 80-pager, so now it's $7.99. That struggle is real, fam.
When God was providing well for my family through COVID, I purchased comics without any financial reasoning, just because I wanted to support my local shops. Now I'm at the point where God's still equally providing, but I have to be fiscally responsible. So
yeah, life is a thing there.
Yeah, so I can't keep buying comics without any hesitation, and X-Force is pushing its way out the door. Batman and the Outsiders officially gone. The door is closed. So there's that. I did pick up Shazam number 14, and this is an absolute thing where I purchased for the cover. I haven't picked up Shazam maybe in 5 issues or 6.
You made it longer than I did.
Yeah. It was getting real corny. The artwork is consistently bad. I will say that it is probably the worst drawn DC book I've seen. And the fact that you've got Jeff Johns writing this thing, but you can't get a decent artist on it, shame on all y'all. And shame on you, shame on your mother, dishonor on your cow.
Yep, there it is.
So, all the things. But this is the return of Superboy Prime. But Superboy Prime is also making, his appearance in DC Death Metal, but this is like in canon, Marvel, Shazam stuff is happening, and we get Superboy Prime. This is the final issue of Shazam, to my understanding, of this run. And
yeah, at least in current iteration, as we understand it, yeah.
Yeah, this is the final issue of Shazam, so if you just want to jump on for the train of it, but here's the sales pitch. You get Superboy Prime versus Shazam versus the Shazamly versus Black Adam. And
everybody showed up.
Yeah, everybody showed up, and it is a Uber powered slugfest, and it ends with like stuff happening. I don't want to spoil that if you actually care, but
redacted.
Redacted. If you remotely care about the Shazamly, and one of my favorite things is because if you're familiar with the character of Superboy Prime, he has existed outside of the multiverse for a while. From all the way from Infinite Crisis, he sat outside the multiverse and watched as things happened. When he finally starts to fight Billy, he's like, who are these other kids? Like, he's like, these aren't real people. Who the crap are these guys?
He just low key was like, you are not important.
And that's why it's like, he literally looked at the Shazam, but he's like, y'all aren't real. And as the continuity fan in myself, I'm like, that's funny. But so that's a thing. So if you want to go out with a bang on Shazam, it's available. And then I also want to hit my favorite thing that I read in the past 2 weeks. And this came at the encouragement of many of you in the pull list community, as well as some other friends of mine across the intranets. Let's see.
Here's the build-up.
What'd you say?
I said, here's the build-up.
Here's the build-up. Sorry, I stuttered. I have raspy, preachy voice from this morning. I saw several people post about it, and I just didn't care. I don't know about you, but sometimes there are stories I just don't want to read until it's over.
Yeah, this was, and where you're about to go is one of them for me too. So, come on, Hector, this is your chance to convince me of something else that I might actually read.
Okay, so I'd seen the artwork, so Wonder Woman Dead Earth is
there. It is
the book that I've read this week, and there are 4 issues. There are the giant-sized DC Black Label books, and this is me trying to support local shops, with disdain in my voice. I went to my local shop, and they didn't have the books. I walked in, and he's like, I know you were here to get the new books, but I don't have them. And he's like posting all the things on social media, and I'm like, you couldn't have posted you don't have your books. Because I drove 40 miles one way to get said books. But anyway, I was like looking around, and I guess issue 4 of Dead Earth had finally dropped recently. I was like, do you have all 4 issues of this? And I was like, okay, I'll take this. And so I picked up Wonder Woman Dead Earth, and we had a day off with my family. I think it was maybe Labor Day weekend, and we just, grilled her out or whatever. And I just sat down in the backyard and read all 4 issues straight through. And I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there as a statement. This is the best DC book of 2020. Easily.
It's extremely high praise right there.
It is. And you and I have been doing this for a minute, and if Curse of the White Knight was the best DC book for a season, and then Harleen was our best DC book of last year, this easily takes the cake. And I will make this statement. This is single-handedly the best complete Wonder Woman story arc I've read in my adult life. Personally, I'm not telling anybody else to hype that up. That, ooh, you need to buy it. I'm just telling you, sitting on the other side of this microphone, that this is the best Wonder Woman story arc I've read as a whole story.
Is there something you can point out without giving too much away that kind of establishes this for you? Yeah.
So
lay it out.
The gist of it is the story starts out roughly 300 years in the future. There has been some apocalyptic war thing. The Earth is reduced to burnt ash, basically, and there is a small remnant of humans still on the planet. On a scavenging mission, some humans fall into a cavern trying to run from a monster, because guess what? The Earth is overrun with horrible, demonic-looking monster-y things. And so running from these, a group of people along with a monster fall into a cavern, and they're about to be horribly mutilated. By the way, this is a uber violent book. This makes The Walking Dead look like, Marvel's Wizard of Oz. It's like that. It's some of the most violent imagery I've seen in a book. It honestly strikes me that this would go hand in hand with Frank Miller's 300. But the artwork's grittier. And that's one of the things too. I know I'm rabbit trailing, but I'll say this. One of the things I love about this book is that they don't make Wonder Woman absolutely beautiful in every panel. Because one of the things that I feel like gets in the way of taking Wonder Woman seriously as a gritty character sometimes is that sometimes it feels like there's more of an emphasis to draw her as beautiful than they do in character development. There's plenty of panels where she straight up looks like tattered, torn, and you could tell there's no emphasis on trying to make her look beautiful. They're just putting her as a character in a story. I feel like this is one of those books that actually drops that negative trope of having to have a female as a perfect depiction of beauty in every storyline. I digress. So this group of people fall into a cavern, and as they're right before they're devoured, a hand reaches from beyond the panel and straight grabs a monster by the throat and rips its head off or whatever. And turns out that they had fallen into the ashen remains of the Batcave. And in the Batcave was a coffin, casket, capsule, do-hickam-a-thinker that had the body of Wonder Woman in it. If you've played Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, you know how you wake up 100 years later in a reanimation chamber. That's exactly how the story starts. Wonder Woman has just been awakened. I mean, literally, dude, this story plays out just like Breath of the Wild. Wonder Woman has been in this suspended animation healing chamber thing for 200 or 300 years, has lost her memory of recent events of like what led her to being in that chamber, and she's at, let's say, 25% power. And so Wonder Woman decides to lead, and it doesn't go well either initially. She decides to lead humanity's last remnant to safety on Paradise Island against unstoppable forces of monsters and evil. Very Gears of War at times. Like, one of my favorite panels is like you get to see Wonder Woman jump a Jeep into the throat of a giant monster while she busts open a can of gas, pours it down its throat, and lights it on fire, like while she's in its mouth. I mean, it's like that kind of vicious. So you get this brutal story, but part of the thing is her regaining her memory slowly, finding out what happened to the rest of her heroes, finding out what happens to the rest of society, and there is a lot of moral debate. There's a lot of spiritual debate. There's a lot of stuff about forgiveness and things. And remember how I freaked out with the invisible chainsaw in death metal?
Yes.
That's nothing. It's absolutely nothing. And I'm not gonna, put I'm not gonna put the it's sort of a spoiler, but it's one of those things like 300 years later, she's the only hero left. Out of everyone, she's the only hero left. So one of the things is she comes across Superman's body. And this is why I say that the invisible chainsaw has nothing on this. When she comes across Superman's body, her division of a new weapon is to take the lasso of truth, pull Superman's spinal column out of his body, braid the lasso of truth through his spinal column and skull, and fashion it into a jagged whip made of Kryptonian bones. So you get to see Wonder Woman fighting an army of monsters, whipping around Clark Kent's spine and skull. Bruh, I was lost. It's vicious. It's beautiful. Part of it legitimately made me cry. It's freaking awesome. So I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you to read it, but it's straight up your loss if you don't. So
you might have just told me to read it. Got it.
I'm telling you to read it. You also need to read DC Unkillables.
Yes.
The trade is out. Go buy it. Tell your local shop to order it, whatever, but go get it. But no, I'm telling you guys, if you like horror, if you like monsters, if you like bananas action, and you just like a good comic book story, this is fantastic.
Boom.
So that's it. I'm done.
Man, I don't have anything that good on my list. This has been the Pull List Podcast. Thanks for listening, everyone. No, all right. Here we go. So, in my slew of, I did a bunch of number ones again.
You did,
and I feel But it's been like crazy. What it's been like the last 4 months is that everybody's like, here's the new thing. But let's start with the old thing. So Flash is in its final arc with Williamson at the helm. And Reverse Flash has been doing like the most reverse Flash things possible in the middle of this story. Now, granted, the thing I am still most impressed by is that Williamson has told us a story from the very beginning of Rebirth that the main bad guy has been the freaking turtle. So the guy that can slow down time is like the main bad guy that keeps showing up. We've gotten Captain Cold and the Trickster and like all of the original Rogues Gallery, but the center of this story is still on the dude that's like, yeah, I can move really slow. But the Reverse Flash is messing with the universe as one does because Barry Allen and Thrawn Earbard do absolute like carnage to the time stream. It's literally their existence. If you've seen any iteration of the Flash on television through CW to reading comics in the last 5 to 10 years or even beyond that, and even in the movies, Barry Allen screws up time travel. That is the subline of every Flash story. And the Reverse Flash is just like, cool, I'm going to keep messing with this. And there's some important DC continuity things. The reason that I'm talking about 761, not just that we're getting to the end of this crazy battle, is we now know a few things about DC continuity because of the Reverse Flash. And so I'm going to spoil a few things, but they're things that are very old. So if you want to find out what's going on, then you pause here and then come back after you've read 761. Is this issue actually tied directly to Heroes in Crisis, which surprised me. Because that is something that I did not expect to come. And what we find out about what the Reverse Flash has learned to do is to travel through time, exist in time, and he's found a way to basically, through his, vibration thing that we all know that the Flashes can do, is that he can implant ideas into people's minds that they think are their own. And if you remember Heroes in Crisis, you might start figuring out where this is going.
Do tell. I want to know.
Basically, yeah, what happened here is he shows us a bunch of images from all the way back to Batman and the Flash and the Button. He shows them looking at the Button doing the, why haven't we talked about this in forever? And thank you for someone bringing it back up in DC continuity, because that was starting to bother me. And the thing that he implanted in Batman and Flash's mind was, well, maybe we don't need to worry about this right now, or that basically the Button scares them, so we'll come back to it later. But the Wally West thing is that he implants in his mind is, no one will ever believe what you did. From the Heroes in Crisis moment. So he basically convinced him of what we knew, that he was like, I'm going to cover up what occurred because no one would understand or believe that that's actually what happened. But the point to doing this is we now know that the Reverse Flash has traveled throughout a whole bunch of Rebirth continuity, and when really weird or questionable actions took place, if it wasn't fully insinuated, it was at least partially insinuated that that was the Reverse Flash messing with the entire Rebirth timeline.
So you've got Dr. Manhattan up until the Rebirth timeline, and now that we've actually landed at a place where Dr. Manhattan's not screwing with us anymore, now we got Thawne.
Supposedly. And it's interesting because the other thing that they did is that page in the middle of 761 is drawn in the same style of all the Watchmen adjacent books. It's a 9-panel, straight panel page. And it looks different from the rest of the book. Like, honestly, fam, from a DC continuity and just like storytelling in general, this was a really brilliant, like, some people are like, I don't know if I like this, but the more and more I kind of bathe in what they did and why, I'm like, this is actually kind of smart. Because it's tying together stuff, whether this was the intention or not, because we don't know what's coming next because of the whole lack of 5G and everything, that we're now starting to get pieces of how all the what appeared as not related but related continuity stuff is suddenly related again. And it's in the Flash book. Who knew? So this is me being a total Flash nerd, but also being like, wow, if you really care about DC continuity, you need to back up the bus and catch what's going on. So now into my slew of number ones. let's finish up with our DC property. I did read the new Hellblazer Rise and Fall, Black Label. So Constantine in Hellblazer and regular books disappeared. We get Hellblazer Rise and Fall in this, the giant magazine size Black Label. And it's pretty much everything that I think most Constantine fans are looking for. It's a murder mystery type story. There's demons and there's magic stuff. He swears a lot and lots of things catch on fire. Does anyone have any questions about what a Hellblazer book looks like? No? Anyone? Yep. That's pretty much what you got. I don't know if it's good, bad, or indifferent, but it's about what I expect out of John Constantine as a character and Hellblazer as a book. So I think until I know who the big bad is, which they kind of give us clues to, but there's not a ton there, I'm just kind of lying in wait.
Isn't this book already canceled?
No. This is the Black Label. It's a 4 or 6 part. The regular Hellblazer has been canceled. That's why it's like, right? What are we doing here? Well, that's what we're doing. Is you got a Hellblazer where he actually swears instead of just reading gibberish on a regular DC comic. So John Constantine doing John Constantine things. I think most fans will probably be happy with what's going on. If you're looking for PG-13, it's not here. Move on. But next, I spent some time over in Marvel Land because they've been dropping tons of new titles kind of left and right. And one of those, which they delayed till now, was the return of Black Widow. I definitely wanted to pick it up and see where we were at, if it would tie to what's going on. Eventually when we get the movie and everything, because that's why they held it, was they wanted it to come out closer to when we actually get to eventually see the movie. And I really kind of enjoyed it. I'm typically skeptical of a lot of Marvel properties when they do that close to movie release, that they generally don't seem to be strong. But this one is, she's been literally off the grid for a while. And because she did disappear at the end of the last one, from what I remember, because I remember reading the end that, and there were some follow-on stories with Hawkeye and Bucky where they were looking for her, and that's kind of where we pick up, and they kind of accidentally see her, and she has amnesia, does not know what her previous life was, but they demonstrate that she's like, oh, I naturally know how to ride a motorcycle. She's married. And
so it's
is like
a long kiss goodnight.
Yeah, I guess, more or less. So yeah, she's
Marvel's revolutionary new idea is the 1990s action movie starring Gina Davis and Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, cool.
But we're gonna get Hawkeye, we're gonna get Bucky and international spy stuff and her riding motorcycles, but she doesn't know who she is, and she just kind of wandered past a news camera, and like everyone went, wait a minute. Even bad guys. So that's kind of the setup of the first issue is Bucky and Clint are like, wait. And then a bunch of bad guys are like, there's the target. And I'm like, okay, I'm down. This is comics. I'm in. So good job. I thought it was really fun. I will read another issue of that for sure. But then I finished out my Marvel reading during this period because I guess it's near Halloween and I'm an idiot for anything that has the word zombie in it, and read Marvel Zombies Resurrection #1. This was another one for us, I suppose, that I walked by the rack and I saw a picture of Galactus on the cover and went, ooh. This was a really big book, first of all. I don't know what the page count on it was, but it was not 30-something. It was gigantic. And lots of rotting flesh and craziness and all that good stuff, as one would expect from anything with the words Marvel and zombies in it. But I hit the end of it and I still kind of don't really know what's going on or care. And that's unfortunate because at least some of these stories kind of give us why we're here and everything. But this particular one, for some reason, is centering around the X-Men side of the universe more so than anything. So there was lots of stuff going on their side with rotting flesh and random zombieism and stuff like that. So it's a pretty zombie book, but I don't really know what I read. And that kind of is a bad look in the long run for random comics, but I guess I'll pick up the second one to see if they make something of the mess that was the first. And that's kind of where I am with some of these companies of, you keep asking us why some comic readers are like, nah, I'm good, I'm out. Well, it's because we get 17 #1s in a week. We feel some reason to actually try them all, and maybe one of them was good. Just write good stuff. I mean, or make it look really pretty. And I guess if I came away with anything, that was a pretty zombie book for sure. So those were kind of like my general pulls, and I guess we should wander into the number ones that were like, no, seriously, you should actually read these. Sure. And so I'm gonna cheat because I do that. It's like it's my podcast or something. But Grendel Kentucky came out during this period, and yes, full disclosure, it's one of those that Tommy Lee Edwards did the drawing for and is part of the story making and all that good stuff. And he was our partners at NC Comic Con. His son Henry worked for us, and I miss him dearly. And part of this is the main characters are based on Tommy's kids. They're drawn exactly as they are. So I picked up Grendel Kentucky and I was like, it's Henry. So the dude with the shotgun exists. It's his son, and he's a cool dude. And he plays lots of Dungeons and Dragons and taught me cool things about D&D. Hi, Henry. But what this story is a modern day retelling of Beowulf in rural Kentucky. It involves biker gangs, weed farmers, and something that lives in a mine that we haven't quite figured out what it is yet. So if you're looking for...
if you would have told me this was a retelling of Beowulf, I would have jumped on it.
I honestly didn't fully know that until I picked it up, and I was like, oh, that's what's going on. And it's really cool. And so it's from AWA, which seems to be really growing in terms of presence on shelves during all this, because they just went into hustle mode when COVID hit. And there's a couple other titles out there that carry their moniker, and I'm forgetting right now, that I'm seeing more and more on the shelf. So I'd look out for stuff coming out of that shop. But this is a beautiful book. Tommy puts a lot of work into his stuff, and he draws stuff really big. He doesn't do normal comic size stuff. He usually draws big and it gets shrunk, which is kind of cool. But he has a very explicit style, and you can kind of pick it up through this book. But yeah, it's just fun that he usually models a lot of stuff on people around him or people that he care about. And his kids are in a lot of stuff because that dude loves his family. So if you can find it, read it. It is an adult book. Like I said, weed farmers, biker gangs, lots of swearing. But it is a Beowulf modern telling, and it's pretty neat so far. But that leaves me with my actual, completely no strings attached. What did I just read? And oh my goodness, other people need to read this, I think, because A, it's visually stunning, and B, the concept is so off the wall that I was like, okay, we need to figure this out. And that was, stay with me, long title. We Only Find Them When They're Dead is the title of the book. It's from Boom Studios. And this thing just made my head hurt because the cover doesn't tell you a whole lot. They didn't give a whole lot of background in the solicitation. But as you read the story, you're basically unfolding this sci-fi way in the future type thing of these ships that are called autopsy ships, which seemed weird as you're beginning to read. And then you're starting to realize what they're actually talking about. That they are literally these surgical ships that go and find these gigantic dead gods in this universe that they then literally mine for resources, flesh, fat, chemicals, etc.
So
and that
nowhere in Marvel.
Yeah, similar, I guess.
Because that's what we see in Guardians.
Yeah, that's very similar to Nowhere. Except whatever's going on in this world is there's multiple of these gods. We don't know where they come from, what they ascribe, etc. We just know that they die, and that all these independent autopsy corporations show up with permits for very specific things that they're allowed to mine and stuff. So it's a really weird story that they establish a lot of bureaucracy in. And I never thought I'd be interested in space autopsy bureaucracy, but here I am. And part of it is that there's some organizations that are kind of fighting each other because, certain things are worth more money. So they try to, get stuff they're not supposed to so that they can get more money and all that. But the captain of the ship that we start with is fascinated with the gods. And he talks about the fact that, as the name of the book implies, we only find them when they're dead is, well, what about them alive? Now, we don't know what motivation he has for that, but that's kind of the setup of the first issue is we learn all these pieces of this universe, and he's like, I think I can find one that's alive. And I'm just like, bruh. My brain kind of hurts with all the concepts that are involved here, but I want to know more. it's kind of morbid, but it's a really interesting setup. And I got to give credit to comics that make me stop and go, what?
Well,
and I don't. Yeah.
When you mentioned this, it actually made me have a flashback to. Did you ever watch the sketch comedy series Kids in the Hall?
Yes.
There was a sketch in Kids in the Hall where, and please understand, I'm talking about stupid fiction from Canada, and I know it's not biblically accurate.
Hi-oh.
But there's a Kids in the Hall sketch where they find God's body because God has died, and that's how they found him, because he's invisible, and they found his body because somebody tripped over him in like Burbank or something. And so like when I started flipping through the concept of this, I'm like, oh, this is like the galactic version of that Kids in the Hall sketch.
Things to bring you thought. Deep thoughts with Hector. All right, so as we kind of come to our time here, what was the number one thing that jumped off the shelves for you this week? Past weeks.
Cyberpunk was really fun. It's one of those game. It's a game tie. I did Cyberpunk's Trauma Team, and it's basically a where if you're a EMT driver, an ambulance-y person, like a lifesaver-y person, you have to also be a fully trained soldier.
Oh, okay.
So, like, not only do you have to try and save people, but you have to try and save people while shooting bad guys or whatever.
Right, combat medic, got it.
Yeah, but that's the only kind of medic that exists.
Okay.
Like, the world is such crap that you have to be, like, in full combat mode if you need an ambulance. But apparently, ambulances are only available for people with money. Like, even, I know that's how it sounds now.
There it is.
But you have to have, like, gobs of money. And that when an ambulance is called, you have to, like, pay, like, a fortune. Which is kind of like it is now, just more violent. But the whole story centers around one woman who... she was the only person from her medic team to survive. And she's trying to get cleared back to active combat. Or active rescue. And it was a good story. So that... I also read Bill and Ted #1, which is an official canon sequel to the first two movies, and an official canon prequel to the third movie. Which, by the way, the third movie was absolutely fantastic. It's much better than the first two, and I enjoyed it immensely. I'm done.
And that's Hector. So... normally where we jump in at this part of the show is our favorite out of context panels. We're probably going to skip this week, but we do need to inform all of you. We had our first winner chicken dinner on our panels from the last episode, and Todd Turner just reads too many comics, but he already knew that. So we're going to work on getting him his swag bundle.
I actually talked to him right before this. So.
See, boom, we're going to get him his swag. So yeah, we're not kidding. We're not just making stuff up, being like, "Hey, we're going to give you stuff if you win." No, we're seriously going to.
Can I throw a quote out? I promise I'll be quick.
So Hector wants to challenge you this week. So
I do.
All right, prepare yourselves
for out of context comics quotes. Now,
boom.
Whoever gets this will get a brand new graphic novel. And we will mail that to you. So here's my out of context comic quote. Ready and go. I'm terribly sorry to interrupt the pastoral beauty of this moment. End quote.
Oh, dang. Yeah, if we're playing obscurity, then yeah, I'm throwing mine into the mix as well. Because yeah, that's solid. That's going to make my head hurt. But here you go. So listen closely. Chris's out of context panel is, do I believe a bear killed my daddy?
Well, just based on your recommendation, I feel like that has to be the Grendel, Kentucky thing.
It very well could be. So I will be sending Hector. And isn't that great? Is that you're like, yeah, that seems really easy. There's more to that quote, but it involves some bad words.
Oh, some bad words. All right.
So Hector, if you want to drop that one on everybody one more time, because I think yours is going to take some digging.
All right, here it is. I'm terribly sorry to interrupt the pastoral beauty of this moment.
There you go. So congratulations again to Todd for figuring us out last week, and good luck on this week's. So that's it for here for here, blah, blah. See, that's it. We got so excited. We were doing so well. But that's it for us here at the Pull List Podcast. Episode 11 of season 2 is now in the books, and it's now in your ears. But we couldn't possibly do this alone. As many of you know, we take this epic journey of podcasts and fandom with a cross-section of other podcasts at Love Thy Nerd. And you can hit them up over at the Love Thy Nerd podcast network at lovethynerd.com. Go ahead and click on listen. You can see a cross-section of new shows, and we're just constantly adding stuff to the network, and it's really exciting that we continue to grow and cover all kinds of different fandoms. So again, Hector and I just want to thank each and every one of you for choosing us as your primary comic book knowledge factory on a near bi-weekly basis. We've been doing pretty good lately. So don't leave us hanging. Rate and review the show on your podcasting app of choice. We're on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher Radio. They keep adding things. We're even on SoundCloud. How crazy is that? We're like everywhere. So everyone, thanks for listening.
Are we independent rappers now?
I mean, maybe we could be. No, maybe not. But we could be. But fam, seriously, thanks for listening. And remember, kids, read more comics.
I'm gonna take all 7 continents in the game of risk.